Hi, thanks for joining us today. We're going to be discussing Chapter 11. This is Team F. On the following slide, we have described here our team information. My name is Chanel Parag, and I'll be discussing what teams expect of leaders, leadership and power, as well as the advantages and disadvantages of differential treatment.
And I'm Ian Holton, and I'm going to be going over leaders in the nature-nurture debate, theories of leadership, theories of leadership.
Hey everybody. Oh, sorry, I'm screwing this all up. My name is Kenneth Serber, and I'll be doing leadership styles, leader categorization, and elected and appointed leaders.
And I'm Chelsea Dusenberry, and I'll be talking about participative management, delegation, and organizational involvement.
Wonderful. So to get this started, we're going to be talking about what the teams expect of leaders. And as an employee anywhere, we all come in with expectations of what a leader should be. The perceived status of a leader can be either high or low, and either way it affects the team and the leadership styles. I have listed here some of the characteristics that are expected of a leader. Of a good leader, that is. Authoritative, appearance, kindness, take charge, and sympathetic. I have here written an example of the expectations that I have at my store. We're very professional, and to have a leader that is leads by example is really important. And I had a leader who left for her maternity leave, and someone had to fill in her place. So we had high expectations of what leader we should have in following. On the following slide, I have here a listed about leadership and power. And the definition of power is the capacity to influence, which I thought was a great definition. The power is not only for individuals, but it's for the act of using power in rewarding and stimulating, which is referring back to our text. The 6 sources of power include legitimate power, informational power, I'm not sure how to how to pronounce that, expert power, insensitive power, and referent power. And I put there as a picture the leadership and what surrounds it. And so there's empowering people, inspire people, lead, and shared. And in my last slide here, I'll be discussing the advantages and disadvantages of differential treatment. This has a lot to do with some of the advantages of the differential treatment is that the LMX, the LME, which is the Leader Membership Exchange, increases the member commitment, which is also associated with the involvement of the team and the team performances. But on the downfall side, there's times when the developed between the leader and the members of the team that consequently the team members may be resentful of the leader, particularly when the other team members do not have close relationships with the leader. So I left here on the side a experience that I've had with Starbucks is when it is against standard to be friends with any of the lead positions or anyone in a higher rank than you, to avoid any kind of favoritism or differential treatment. You don't want to cause any uproar in the coworkers, and to keep a common, stable environment, that would be important. Thank you. Moving on to...
All right, next we have nature nurture debate. There's two types of theories when it comes to leadership and the concept of from nature, or does it come from nurture, which is the nature side of it. It's basically the concept that your leadership quality, all like people that become great leaders are born with strengths. And then there's the incremental theory, which is the side of things, which it can be learned and developed or born with. Thing was that studies have shown that describe more to the nurture side of the nurture argument. Leadership was through nurture over nature, less anxious and less depressed than those that think it derives from, which I think makes sense because that like you work expectations of that, it could be more difficult. And a personal example is I also work for Starbucks. It definitely leans towards all the leaders at our store over time, so I would subscribe more to the incremental theory. Most of the people at my store in leadership positions showed signs of, but they really developed. And then moving on to the next slide, we have leadership, which nurture argument. Talking about how leadership is something that you're born with, and it's a flexible thing. It's essentially you're lucky enough to be born with. You kind of either have or you don't. There's also the argument when it comes to what makes great leaders. The military, they have like for leadership positions in the military. And there's also, the book talks about how all high-ranking military officials are college educated. Also personality and leadership, and that just goes into personality types, leadership positions, the personality types that people possess. There's also some other traits that the book mentioned, which was like birth order and gender, but a lot of this has been, it's kind of like when it's, you know, men can be better leaders than women, they've definitely like disproven that. Getting on to the next slide, we have the incremental theories of leadership towards the nurture argument. And current evidence suggests that environmental and personal development can strongly affect leadership. Evidence really points towards it being more of the nurture side of things. Anyone could be a good leader to a certain degree with the right training, the right environment. And there's also talks about situational factors when it comes to leadership, things that might seem trivial like seating arrangements, which I thought was interesting, which is like, you know, who sits at the head of the table can really determine who's going to lead the conversation, whether they're actually the appointed leader or not. It also goes into the random selection of leaders, which is many companies have spent a lot of money doing studies on if you randomly select a leader for a team, how that works versus when on purpose because of their leadership abilities and how it affects the team. They found that leaders they usually have better cohesion with the team because they don't feel the same sense of superiority that a selected leader might. A personal example of this was at Starbucks, supervisors and managers, we kind of have like separate areas than boxes and stuff. And I feel like that's kind of like a weird example of almost like a seating arrangement thing where because that's separate, it's an indication that these people are Christians. And yeah.
Good. Hey, my name's Kenny, and I'm going to talk about some leadership styles. So the main leadership styles are compartmentalized into sort of 3 buckets on how a leader wants to choose to take his leadership role. You have task versus person, transactional versus transformational, and autocratic versus democratic. A task leader focuses on accomplishing objectives of the team and effectively minimizes team conflict from diversity. Or you could take a relationship-oriented route and focus on the process of how do you actually get there. So the people that focus on the process of how to get there, sometimes they tend to exacerbate conflict from diversity, but they do allow more work freedom, and they're able to express their ideas better and use their own judgment. So the relationship-oriented people tend to typically build on feedback and be open to hearing feedback to some of the other people that's on their team when a task leader is actually just working towards an accomplished task and he's not really concerned with the information and feedback that he's receiving from his team. So similar to a task leader, an autocratic leader will seek the sole possession of the leadership. So he wants to be the sole director of who is leading the team. Not saying that he doesn't want feedback or any other forms of diversity from his team, sort of a relationship-oriented leader, but he does want sole possession of leadership, and he wants everyone around him to know that he is the leader of that team. So, and then conversely, in a democratic leadership style, they actually share authority with their team. So they're giving power and control to their team. They're allowed to make decisions together so that it's sort of a two-way streak, similar to our government. We have input in what happens with our government, and a democratic leader is wanting input from everybody. So similar to a task leader, a transactional leader reinforces its subordinates with sort of a successful completion of a task. So like I kind of put on here, they're rewarded with carrots or disciplined with a stick. So every time you do something good, you're getting something in return, such as a carrot. But if you weren't to complete a task or a goal, you're getting disciplined with some kind of write-up or anything like that. That would be in an organization. So what I was previously is I did 6 years with Pepsi, and they were more of a transactional leadership style. We were really contractually based. We walked in and would just talk about our contract and what it entails, and we wouldn't really ask for feedback. So a transformational leader is actually someone who's trying to motivate their team to work towards a goal that go beyond self-interest. So a transformational leader is not only leading its team, but it's leading its customers, and it's building relationships with its partners. So I put on there 3 characteristics of a transformational leader: charisma, intellectual stimulation, and individual consideration. So a transformational leader will actually tailor his social style to an individual and give consideration of how an individual would like to be coached and tailor their own style to how that person is going to be coached. So it's more of a tailored approach and not just dying in to say, hey, you're going to adjust to me as a leader. I'm going to try to adjust to you since I am leading you, and try to format my leadership style to how you like to be coached. So one other factor of all these tasks put together is the leader mood. The mood contagion model says leaders transmit their own moods to team members. So just a person with a cold might spread germs to others. So how you convey yourself and how you bring yourself into work every day is how you're going to convey to your team as a leader. So if you're upbeat and peppy and you're ready to rock and spunky, then your team's probably going to be upbeat and transformational. But if you're coming in with a sour face, you're probably going to have more of a transactional or autocratic leadership style. So how do we categorize our leaders? People tend to have their mental image of the ideal leader before they actually even take a job. They have the picture in their head as, my leader is going to be open, he's going to be honest, he's going to be trustworthy, and they tend to benchmark that leader to how their actual leader is. So if their actual leader is not meeting all those benchmark determinants, then they're obviously not going to be happy with how their leader is leading them. So implicit leadership theories, as I said, is our expectations of a leader. Are they a worthy influence? So is your leader coming out and influencing you to try something new? Is he asking you to reach beyond what you normally do. So people look at these expectations, but they are different from a leader who is elected and one that is appointed. So a person who's elected obviously is someone that the people already trust, they already have empathy towards, they're already looking for them to lead them. But one is appointed is actually a leader who is appointing someone under them to lead the rest of the team. So there could be some level of confusion or there could be some anxiety on how this person is going to lead because the trust is not built. So, which leads into status, uncertainty, and leadership expectations. So based off how you're elected or appointed, you'll feel some level of uncertainty, expectation. So, and if they already had status before they came into this leadership role, it's going to affect your preference regarding their leadership style. So, also, how you work, your environmental conditions such as change, uncertainty, and risk affect how people perceive their leaders. If you are working from home or you're used to working in an office setting, and you switch those conditions all of a sudden, you're obviously going to have different perceptions of how you view a leader. So I actually reported to an office every day working for PepsiCo, but then I would go out in the field. And now I work from home with RJ Reynolds, and I'm still out in the field, but I only see my boss about once or twice a month. And so it changes how I view my leader and micromanagement relationship. It's different when you see your leader every morning than when you see him only maybe 10 to 12 times a year. So, and then female leaders, perception of male and female leaders. Female leaders are judged more harshly than their male counterparts. So it's no big secret that men have more opportunity. Females tend to be devalued when they act in a masculine manner and overt displays of confidence and competence. So when groups are under threat, I thought it was really interesting that they favor a female leader. I tend to show more empathy and more sympathy to a female leader. And I don't know if it's because people see women as like a maternal figure or they just look at them as like a homebody, but women in business are obviously fluctuating in like crazy. My company actually has a female CEO and a female vice president. So we look at females leadership as extremely different, and I think the transitions they're making are outstanding. So I wanted to put the difference between the characteristics of an elected and appointed leaders because I thought that was really important. Elected leaders are very knowledgeable, responsible, well-spoken, and are obviously risk takers. And I thought the appearance was pretty unique in that they're tall and clean cut. And I typically notice that a lot of leaders are really actually pretty tall, pretty clean cut. You don't typically see the disheveled leader unless you get kind of one of those software guys that come in and do something a little unique, but always friendly, caring, and have a sense of humor. So the appointed characteristics are pretty similar when it comes to taking charge. They're knowledgeable, responsible, well-spoken, determined, influential, and in command. But they actually have a little bit more sympathy, I think, because when an appointed leader comes in, they might have walked through some of these shoes and worked their way up through the ranks rather than an elected official who could, say, like a president, just be stepping in, sort of like Donald Trump that we have right now and has never had any type of government leadership. So, but they are open to other ideas. They have a little bit more respect for their team and they're caring and honest. So some examples of an elected official are president, mayor, and a governor. And our appointed characteristics, our appointed leaders are Supreme Court justice, leaders of our U.S. Army and generals and things like that. So moving on to Chelsea.
Participative management is a model in which senior leadership empowers employees to be a part of a large range of organizational decisions and experiences. This can include budget development, scheduling, strategic planning, and even making compensation decisions. The figure on the right is an example of the team empowerment continuum. It shows the type of empowerment the teams experience as their authority increases. The level of authority is dependent on the organization's commitment to participative management. When teams have to learn a new task, leadership makes a huge difference in the development of effective tactics. Studies have shown that teams led by a coordinator in which all team members share equal responsibility implement better tactics than commander-led teams, ultimately making them more successful. Delegation happens when one person empowers another person to complete a task. Delegating is essential in teamwork. It allows all members to feel like they equally contribute and buy into the team's mission. Additionally, when leaders delegate, it prevents their exhaustion and allows them to mentor without being overwhelmed. I work for a company that operates under Theory Y. Our leadership team is highly participative and encourages feedback from all employees. Each year, our executive team gets together to determine our company goals. The month before our strategic planning meetings, our exec team seeks out ideas for company improvement from all 450 employees, whether it's one of our VPs or a worker on the line. At the strategic planning meeting, our executives pool these ideas and create 8 to 10 strategic goals. The executive team then puts middle management and young high potentials in charge of these projects. This allows all employees to take part in company strategies and influence organizational direction. This strategy has been a successful practice for the last 5 years and has helped our business and employees to grow. Thank you very much. This has been our presentation on Chapter 11 for IS 343.
Stop broadcast.